Hello and welcome to the ORA Unlocked podcast. Today we have a very interesting guest for you. He is VP Finance, Greenwin Corp. He is a philanthropist. He's a Torontonian. Very excited to welcome Jess Faigal to the ORA Unlocked podcast. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad to be here.
You know, what we could do is if we could start by you telling everyone your journey and how you happen to be where you are.
Absolutely. It's quite an interesting journey. Let me just take you back in time, going back almost 40 years ago. I'm originally from the Philippines, Manila, Philippines. My family emigrated to Canada back in 1976. So we left the Philippines for various reasons. We were sort of a middle-class family there, but just with all the political upheaval back in the mid-70s there with martial law, we just felt that life would be better in Canada. So we packed everything in and just came to Canada, but we came one at a time. So I think starting from 1973 to 1976, there was always a family member leaving. So background of my family, I come from a family of 7 children. Oh. I'm 6 of 7 children, so 9 including my parents. Unfortunately, my father died at a very young age in 1970 when he was 45 years old. I was only 7. My mom was 45 as well at that time. So my mom was widowed at a very young age, with 7 kids, the oldest being 22, the youngest being 5, and I was, like I said, 7 at that time. So in 1976, my sister sponsored us. We came to Canada, settled in Toronto, and this is where my journey began. At that point in time, my mom could not really afford to be on her own, so we kind of just farmed off, pieced us off to various members of the family, because I have older siblings. There's 2 generations in my family. As I said to you, the oldest is 22 and 5, the youngest. So, I'm kind of the second generation of the family. So there were some older ones that were already working. We stayed with them when we landed here in Toronto temporarily until my mom can get her bearings. So about a year later, my mom was able to secure a townhome at Leslie and Shepherd, which was then ran by Ontario Housing Corporation, which is now Toronto Community Housing, because the province offloaded it to the city. And that's, I would say, is probably the pinnacle point of my life when my journey began, because I grew up in a very poor neighborhood in North York. And if you know Leslie and Shepherd, it's like a tale of 2 cities, Joe, okay?
It is.
There's affluent air surrounding, by north of the hospital, which is where I lived. And we were nestled in the middle of that affluent community in a social housing project. There was nothing wrong about the social housing project. And to this day, I'm very appreciative of the government assistance that social housing provided, because it provided us with shelter for 9 years. However, in those 9 years, and I must just confess to everyone here, I hated every day of those 9 years there, because I faced poverty, no hope at all, and my mom could not hold a job if her life depended on it. And Let me just explain the story of my mom.
Yes,
Later
please.
on, just shortly after my father died, my mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Wow.
She was manic depressive, and back in the early 70s, mid-70s, that was really unheard of. Yeah. It's like we don't have the social programs and the public awareness that we have now, Joe, in terms of mental health issues. So my mom suffered through this, stigmatized. I was stigmatized. And growing up in this poor neighborhood where my mom sometimes could not afford rent, left me in a state of despair. I'm one of those child that went to bed without having dinner because my mom couldn't afford groceries. That's my life story. Lived that for I won't say the whole 9 years, but in my teen years, right up until I finished college, that was life for me.
Wow.
Getting eviction notices, telephone being cut off. This was pre-cell phone days, so we had landlines back then, with the rotary dial, Joe, remember that?
I do.
And we used to get cut off, and imagine a teenager, always sociable, trying to talk to your friends on the phone. We didn't have that at all because our lines were cut off. Our line was cut off, rather, and we had no food to eat. And some nights that I went to bed hungry. Couldn't afford to buy winter coats sometimes, so I had to double up on sweaters. Had to wear running shoes for winter. And it was really through the generosity of, I think, back then the Ontario Housing Corporation that we were able to have shelter. It wasn't the greatest shelter, it was roach infested. Wow. And we tried to as much fumigate it, clean it, Imagine sleeping at night and you have a cockroach crawling up your face, or you're in the middle of having dinner and a cockroach from the wall will dart through your meal. Just lose your appetite. That's kind of the childhood I've had.
Yeah.
I was very bitter about it, very angry about it, didn't really understand it, and really to a point that I even blamed my mom for it, for not providing for us, because I could not really comprehend the magnitude of our mental health issues.
Yeah. You were 7, so I am assuming you must have had some memory of what life was like in the Philippines. So that contrasting where you'd come from to what you're describing now, that must have been very hard to take at such a young age.
Just to put things in context, Joe. So I was 13 by the time we came to Canada, right? So I have still very limited memories of I've never been back home, which is kind of odd. I've been here almost 40 years. But life was probably a lot easier than even for a third world country, basically still classified third world country. We had a home there. We had people at home that cared for us. We had a caretaker, I had a nanny when I was younger.
Wow.
So, chauffeur-driven vehicle. So come to Canada was different. You had to fend for yourself. And I think that's kind of what really exacerbated my mom's condition, was she could not really, at age 51 when she emigrated here, why do I have to do all these things, Joe?
Exactly.
So she couldn't accept that.
Yeah.
And sometimes she would lash out on us, almost like blaming us for her predicament. She used to call us her offspring. It's a term that just wasn't very endearing. She was bitter about it too. But now understanding her condition now, like I understood why she was like that. So there was kind of a contrast from life in the Philippines and life here. When you watch movies, the Western world, it's all about the land of opportunity.
Absolutely.
It wasn't like that at all. Like, when I have to go through 1 foot of snow with running shoes and my toes frozen because my mom couldn't afford to buy me a winter boot.
Jess, could you share with us, what was the neighborhood like? What your experiences, your friends going to school? Okay. I mean, what was that like for you?
So I didn't go to a local school because when we emigrated to Canada, I lived in Flemington Park, which is domiciled with my sister. So I decided, because I was in grade 7 then, just decided to finish 7 and 8 there, going to high school. So I really didn't have any friends. I tried to socialize within the neighborhood, but during that time, the neighbor was predominantly Caucasian, like Southeast Asian descent. Yeah. I suffered racism there. I remember one traumatic experience I had growing up there, Joe. I think I was in grade 8, walking home. Got off the bus on my way to the door. My neighbor, this girl, was in front of my door with a baseball bat, threatening to swing that at me.
Wow.
And I said to her, "Go ahead. Take your swing." She walked away, called her bluff, right?
Wow.
But deep down inside, I was petrified. During Easter, one year, someone played a joke in our house, pelted eggs in our window, and my mom had a hard time cleaning that. One more story I want to share with you is that my eldest brother, who's 15 years older than me, was driving us home one day, and I made a comment, "God, I'm back in the slums of Willowdale," right? Back then that was called Willowdale.
Yeah.
He turned around, stopped the car, and looked at me, "Jess, how could you even say that? You have a home. Be grateful." And that was one of the defining moments in my life, though. I said, you know what? He's right. I'm not living in the streets. It's not the most desirable neighborhood. No. The house wasn't in the best condition, but I had a shelter. And I made it a point in my life to say, you know what, Jess? I got to get out of here. Got to get my mom out of here. Got to get my younger brother. So one younger brother that was living with us then. Got to get them out of this neighborhood. I was never a good student in high school. I was average. Never made the honor roll. Yeah. So academically, I wasn't very strong.
Okay.
I got by. So I said to my mom, I'm not university material. Back then, there was grade 13. You need to go to grade 13 to go to university. I said, Mom, I'm not going to university. I'm going to go to community college.
Okay.
She said, which one? Seneca College, up the street, at Don Mills and Finch. What are you going to be studying, Jess? Accounting and finance. What do you want to be an accountant for? I said, Mom, I have no idea. I don't know what I want to do. She said, what is it that you really want to do? I said, Mom, I want to be a social worker. She said, why don't you follow that? Why do you want to be a social worker? I said, I think deep down inside, I have this insatiable need to help people. Okay? There's just something gratifying about that. She said, well, follow your dreams.
So, Jess, let me get this straight. It's one of the things that make you such a unique person. Here you are, growing up in Toronto housing. You don't have much.
Yeah.
But you're thinking of helping other people.
I think it's just because I grew up poor. I know what it's like to be in that side of the fence. And I think it's innate in me, Joe, because, in spite of my mom's shortcomings, she was a very giving, generous person. I have a 90%, I have a 90-10 rule, okay? 90%, I have a very big heart, okay? And I say that with the utmost humility. 90% of my heart is for my family. I give all to my family, my wife and my 2 kids, and all my relatives. 10% of that is for who I consider true friends. I could probably count with one hand my true friends, that I consider them as family, okay? And the rest are strangers that I want to help. Because I strongly believe, Joe, that we're put on this earth to help people, okay? So growing up a poor boy, I know what it's like. I want to share that with someone because I was the benefactor of social assistance through Toronto Community Housing, giving us affordable housing. There was a group in our church called Society of St. Vincent de Paul, which helps the poor. For 7 to 8 years, they helped us buy groceries when my mom couldn't afford it. Gave us clothing when I told you a story. I didn't have a pair of boots. They took me to Honest Ed's at Bathurst and Bloor. Get you a pair of boots. Not going to be the best boots. They're not designers just, but they're functional. Got me a toque, got me a pair of gloves, and got me a winter jacket. And I'm forever grateful to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul to this day.
When I first met you, you once shared a story with me that was amazing, and I was hoping you could share that with our audience. And it was a story of how you and your brother used one set of mitts and one.
Yes.
If you could share that,
Yes.
please.
Okay, so there was one winter, there was a snowstorm. Again, we went to school at Donmos in Eglinton, and at that time we lived at York Mills and DVP. There was a townhouse complex. They were staying with my sister. The bus was moving slow. My brother and I decided to get off. I said we're faster walking home, okay, on Donmos Road. Yeah. Between the two of us, we each had our winter jacket. Between the two of us, we had one pair of mitts, one toque, okay? So my youngest brother says to me, Jess, which one do you want? I said to him, my ears are frozen. Calm. I said, give me the toque. He said, fine, Jess. So I put the toque on, kept my hands in my coat pocket to keep them warm. My brother took the pair of mitts, put it over his ears so his ears will stay warm. And if that isn't brotherly love, I don't know what would define that. Through thick and thin, family is family.
Yeah.
And one thing I can share with whoever's listening to this podcast is that, when the chips are down, you turn to your family. Yeah. And that was, I think, a prime example of just brothers helping each other out.
Amazing, Jess. Amazing. So you get to Seneca.
Yes. So I studied accounting. It was supposed to be a 3-year program. The 3rd year was finance. At that point, I was really petrified, Joe. I stepped into the campus September after Labor Day. I said, Jess, we're going to give this one crack. If it doesn't work, you're going to quit. You're going to find a job. Because I couldn't afford to be unemployed. My mom couldn't support me. My mom could not even support herself. Got in there really petrified, overwhelmed. And you imagine, I went to an all-boys Catholic school. Now there's female in this. I said, where am I here?
A different world.
Different world, and thousands more students as opposed to hundreds of students in a small school. Yeah. And I tried it. Week 1 went. I developed a migraine headache from the stress. I threw up. I remember going home just from the stress of studying. I pushed and pushed myself. I said, let's make it or break it now. And to my surprise, 2 months into it, I was getting straight A's.
Oh, wow.
I said, here's someone that could barely pass mathematics in grade 12. Imagine me. I became an accountant.
Yes, you did.
And I'm terrible at math. I attribute that just as if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. Okay? I had a sense of purpose. In high school, I had to go to high school because it was, my mother told me I have to, right? And I couldn't drop out before the age of 16. I said, I just finished it through. Yeah. When I got to college, I said, Jess, it's make it or break it. This is your livelihood. This is your future. So I had a sense of purpose. I kept plodding along, did very well in my first year, at Seneca College at a 3.8 GPA out of 4.
Wow.
8 A's and 2 B's. And the 2 B's were electives, but all my business courses, accounting, straight A's.
Wow.
Okay. Get to the 2nd year. I said, I don't feel like going to school anymore. I just want to work. I knew I had to work. I wasn't going to rely on social handouts. Yeah. So I dropped from the 3-year accounting and finance program to the 2-year accounting program, which basically prepares you to become an accounting clerk. Okay. It's not going to move you any further up in the ladder. I just wanted a job, Joe.
Okay.
So I did that. Still graduated with honors, but struggled. Couldn't find a job in 1984 when I graduated. I was so dejected, disillusioned. I thought the education was my door to success. Couldn't find a job because A, I had no experience, and B, we just got out of a recession at that time. I remember one day walking on Bay Street with a handful of resumes, just going to different businesses there, handing my resume. I couldn't afford, a summer suit. I had a 100% wool jacket. I was sweating in it, sweltering in the middle of June and July. And again, another act of kindness. My oldest brother says to me, because I couldn't afford to photocopy resumes. Again, this was before the computer printers at home. He says to me, he worked at Canada Post. He says, meet me at Canada Post at Don Mills and Lawrence, where he worked. At the food court, at shops at Don Mills. I'll give you a resume. So he photocopied it. I think he went to Kinko's or wherever, photocopied it. And he put his hand on my shoulder. It's going to be okay, Jess. Because I was so depressed of not finding a job. And as I was leaving, he says, Jess, come back here. Takes $20 from his wallet, hands it to me, just so you have bus fare and you have something to eat. And again, I said to myself, I have all this support system. I got to make it. The grace of God, I found a job in August, just after the Civic Day holiday weekend, out in Mississauga. I lived at Leslie Shepherd, no car. I boarded my brother's car to go to the interview. And I remember the interviewer saying to me, Joe, you live in North York. How do you propose you're going to commute across the city to Mississauga with 4-1 traffic? And as I said, his name was Don. I said, Don, or it's Johnson. I said, Mr. Johnson, don't worry about it. He said, did you drive today? I said, yes, I did. I wasn't lying. I drove. I just didn't tell him it wasn't my car because I didn't want to be prejudiced from getting the job because he was concerned about me commuting. So for 3 months after I got the job, I was commuting. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, out the door by 6. I would walk down Shepherd. There was no Shepherd line back then, Joe. I would go take the Shepherd 85 bus to Shepherd Subway, take the southbound train to Bloor, got across to Islington, take the Mississauga Transit bus, Burrenthorpe, get off at Dixie, take another Mississauga Transit. It took me almost like 3 hours. I would get there like at about 9 o'clock. I did this for 3 months. Didn't say a word.
6-hour commute.
Yeah. Each day, 6-hour commute. That's right. And then one day I was having lunch with Mr. Johnson, my boss. He says to me, so how's it going, Jess? I said, it's going okay, Don. He says to me, how's the commute? I said, well, I take the bus. What do you mean you take the public transit? I thought you have a car. I said, no. I said, Don, I don't have a car. I said, I only boarded my brother's car during the interview. He says, where do you live? I said, Leslie and Shepherd. I said, good. I live at Bayview and Davisville. There's an Esso gas station at the corner of Bayview and Shepherd. I want you to meet me there every morning at 8 o'clock. We will drive together to Mississauga, and I will drop you off there at the evening. He did that for 1 year.
Brilliant.
Another act of kindness, Joe. So you asked me earlier, like, why I said that, I want to give so much help. Those acts of kindness just really stayed in me, resonated well with me, that I said to myself, when I become a boss, I'm going to be like Don Johnson, my role model, my very first boss.
Brilliant.
Because he showed that act of kindness, went along. He didn't even realize what he did for me. And the next year I saved enough money, I bought my own car. He says to me, Jess, we can still carpool if you want. You can save your gas money. I said, Don, it's okay. It's all good, right? And I said to him, Don, listen, I just really want to thank you for that act. He said, Jess, don't even sweat it. Don't even think about it. I was happy to do it for you.
Right.
So I finished Seneca College. Like I said, I started working there. And then I started to enter back then there were 3 accounting bodies in Canada: the CAs, the Chartered Accountants, the CMAs, the Certified Management Accountants, CGA, Certified General Accountant, which I was a member of. So I took the CGA route because I couldn't get into CA program because I had no undergrad degree, right? That was a requirement. I did it from 1986 to 88. I only passed 1 exam. I was struggling. I said, my God, what am I going to do now? I packed it in. I told my girlfriend, then who was now my wife, I'm going to pack this in. We're going to get married in a few years. I'm just going to keep working and kind of find myself. So for those 2 years, from 1988 to 1990, until I got married, I was lost. I didn't know what to do with my career. I thought of switching careers, Joe. So what am I going to do? I'm pigeonholed as an accountant. I was barely making anything, at a company that it wasn't an upstart, but it was just struggling. And I couldn't I wouldn't dare ask for a raise. I went 6 years without a salary increase there.
Wow, 6 years.
And finally, after I got married, my wife's a registered nurse, U of T graduate. I really admired her for what, she accomplished in her life. And she wasn't a bright student to just like me. We were never in the honor, but we had enough smarts to get through.
Yeah.
He got through 4 years at U of T, got her RN license, starts working at Sunnybrook. I said to her, Jocelyn, I just want to be like you. I want our kids to say, I'm proud of my dad. My dad has letters after his name.
Yes.
So I said, I'm going to give CGA. So I quit after, from 86 to 88, I quit after that because I couldn't pass. I only passed one exam in those 2 years. It was expensive. My employer didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
I was racking up debts paying for tuition and still working at the same time. I said to her, can I give it one more whirl? She said, just do whatever you want. I'll be very supportive. I re-enrolled, got into the program in 1992, didn't look back. From 1992 to 1995, I got my designation. Brilliant. Failed a few exams along there, but you know what? I picked it up. Because in my mind, I learned something in my life, Joe, in my journey. Success is a funny thing, okay? When you fall, you fail.
Yep.
When you get up and you smile and you pick yourself up again, that itself is a success. I read that from somewhere. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And I always kept that in the back of my mind that you got to pick yourself up. I got my CJA designation.
Brilliant.
And that's when it just catapulted me to the next level. Found another job, the one that didn't give me a raise for six years. I see you guys later. I'm going summer.
Yeah.
25% pay increase just because I thought that was after name.
Yeah.
And then later on, of course, now with the amalgamation, there's only one accounting body in Canada. It's CPA, Chartered Professional Accountant. So we're all now CPAs. In between that, when I was in my late 40s, I decided, because I don't have an undergrad degree, and that's always been a sore spot for me. So I applied for an MBA program without an undergrad degree, okay? Wow. So back then, when CJ was still around, CJ Ontario had an agreement with Laurentian University out in Sudbury.
Yep.
Says you can fast track, no GMAT require, sign up with fee, accept your application, 5 courses, 15 months, you'll get your MBA. So I applied. They rejected my application. I was livid. I contacted the registrar in Sudbury. So how they reject my application? I'm a seasoned accountant. Yeah. You don't have an undergrad degree. I said, well, you partnered with CGA. I said, back then you didn't need a university degree to become a CJ. So they looked at my application. You know what, Jess? We'll let you in the program.
Wow.
Next semester, apply. So I did. 15 months later, I got my MBA at age 48 years old. I got my MBA. And I was saying to my kids, see what your old man did. No undergrad, but I have a graduate degree.
You have a graduate degree.
I said, okay, listen, I went to Laurentian. It's out in Sudbury, but it's a very good school. I said, don't be fooled by the label. It's not Schulich. It's not Rotman's. It's not Richard Ivey. It's not Harvard MBA. But I said, the case studies I did in that MBA program is the same one that Richard Ivey and Western uses.
Absolutely.
And Harvard uses.
Absolutely.
So it's what you make of it, Joe, right? Forget the labeling. And after that, I said to myself, boy, Jess, you can really do whatever you set your mind to. So I preach that to my kids. Good. Both of my 2 boys, they're 30 and 27 now, well educated, working in their respective fields. Okay, and I just really said to myself, and that's when I really started believing. And like I mentioned, I'm in my late 40s. You can really do whatever you want, Joe. Wow. And that's why I'm here today. It's just really to share with everyone my story.
Wow.
And here I'm, and of course, there was ups and downs throughout my career. I struggled, lost jobs 4 times. I got laid off, in real estate with mergers and acquisitions because I was job hopping. I was always looking for that home run swing, which was kind of an, error on my part. I just wanted to strike it rich away and get to the top right away. Yeah. Well, I was getting to the top, making good money. And then all of a sudden, amalgamations happen, mergers, acquisitions. You know what? You're the less, seniority here. See you later, Jess.
Wow.
So, again, I have to start all over again, okay? And remember I told you, as I just said earlier, when you fail and you get up again with a smile, that itself is success. I'm always reminded of that, mantra, right? So I picked myself up. Here I am, job after job. My resume is 5 pages long. I'm embarrassed to say I'm good for 2 years.
Not an embarrassment.
But I've been with Greenwin for
experience.
7 years now. And prior to that, I was with Greenwin from 2000 to 2005. I left. 11 years later, I came back to the same job.
Wow.
Never burned bridges there. I guess they just liked me there. That when the opportunity came, I came back because I love Greenwin.
Yeah.
Greenwin's like second home to me. And when I started working there, and shortly a year after, I got promoted from controller to director of finance. And about, I think, 2 years later in 2019, I got promoted to, or 3 years later, 2019, got promoted to VP finance, which is my current role.
Jess, you have no idea how remarkable this sounds, right? You've gone from coming from the Philippines to Toronto housing,
Yeah.
and from there, you've gone all the way to VP finance.
Yeah.
That is an amazing journey. I mean, just sitting here listening to what you've been through is unbelievable. You know, in this day and age, we deal with a lot of young people who think that the problems that they have are insurmountable. But what you are telling me now is really, truly like climbing Mount Everest. What's kept you going?
I think I'm a driven person. Again, I think it's just innate in me. And sometimes, when you're down, and no hope, I think it fuels yourself to do better, Joe. And that's the message I really want to share with everyone, that it's in you. You don't have to be the smartest person. You don't have to be gifted. I'm anything but those things, qualities, right? And I shared the story, like I struggled in school,
You did,
right?
yeah.
And I came from like basically a poor family where it seems like there's no hope. And I think, situations in life, I think you got to turn, it's a cliche, you got to turn the negative into positives, Joe.
Yeah.
Like I've been through a lot in my life. Like I'll say my age. I'm 60 years old now. Okay, like
You don't look a day over 30.
I got bags under my eyes.
Don't
I still
look a
have
day-
calluses from my hands from my summer jobs. But
Yeah.
I learned from the school of hard knocks, right? Like I really just like in my life experience, and I've been through a lot. Leaving the Philippines and coming here to an unknown country.
Yeah.
I spoke a little bit of English, but then, having to deal with racism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not having food to eat. Like, could you imagine just what's going through a young person? Like those were my formative years.
Formative years.
And
yeah.
and I'm facing all these adversities and all this crisis and all these difficulties, having to deal with a bipolar mother wasn't very easy. Being fatherless at an early age, I had no male role model. My brothers were good to me, but they had their own family. And I'll just share one more story with you so seven children in my family, 6 of children. The fourth child in our family, my late brother Daniel, died about 18 months after my father died.
Sorry to hear.
So my father died of a heart attack. All of a sudden he died. 18 months later, when my brother Daniel passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Okay, and I'll just share this story. It's kind of really, I don't share this story with a lot of people, but I'll put it out there because I think there's a lesson to be learned here. My brother was troubled. He may have had a mental illness like my mom. We don't know. He was heavily into drugs. I'm not talking marijuana. I'm talking LSD, like acid. Like he just like whatever he took back then. Like remember the early 70s, we're getting out of the psychedelic
Yes,
years.
we're getting out of psychedelics.
Years,
yeah. The world was coming out of that.
and the hippie days.
Yeah.
So he was a product of that. Just through bad association, bad sets of friends, he fell into the wrong side of the track, right? And back then I was so young, Joe. I didn't really comprehend what was wrong with it. I just thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
He would lash out at everyone. One time he hit me because he was so high.
Wow.
And they had to lock him in a rehab facility, which I had no idea why he was there. I remember visiting him one time. If you've ever been into one of these facilities, and I think it's the same thing in any mental health institution, it's locked down.
It's locked down, yeah.
You can't just leave, walk. They lock you down, and because you could be suicidal or you could be hurting someone, it's very controlled.
Yeah.
I remember visiting there. I said, "Oh my God, this is like a friggin' prison, right?" I really didn't understand what was wrong with them. So this went on for a few years, and I was very close. He was 10 years older than me. I was very close to him. I loved him dearly.
Wow.
I love all my siblings, but with him, I had sort of had a connection with him for whatever reason. And years later, after he died, we found his journal. He said, to my brother Jess, my beloved brother, my favorite, if that doesn't get your heart, right?
That's it, yeah.
So I'll tell his story with him. So he was into drugs. He was rehabbing. He was getting his life back in order. And for whatever reason, something happened. And to this day, we're not sure what happened. I think he took drugs again. And on a sad day, on April 22, 1972, he took his own life.
Wow.
took my father's sidearm because my father was in the military, and I don't know what possessed my mom. She asked to keep a 45 caliber pistol as a, in memory of my dad. So the Philippine military said, yeah, go keep it. My brother got a hold of his gun, put it in his chest, put a bullet through his chest.
Wow.
Okay, and I didn't see it. Like my oldest brother, he witnessed it after because he heard a loud bang in there. We had a business back home in the office, a travel agency. So my brother ran from the first floor to the second floor where my brother's office was. Found him lying on the bed, full of blood.
Wow.
And he told me the story. He says, Jess, the entry wound was so small, but his back was ripped open.
Wow.
And they took me to the office afterwards. You could see where the bullet ricocheted a few times.
Wow.
He survived for 30 minutes. Lost a lot, but it was by the time we got to the hospital, it was too late. And I'm reminded of that story. And I'm sharing this with everyone, and I get a bit choked up just telling this story. This happened like so long ago, like 50 years ago. I share this story because there's a lesson to be learned there. I can tell you honestly, Joe, I don't even smoke. Never smoked in my life. Never did drugs. And going to even an affluent school like De La Salle, I hate to say there were drugs there. People. I went to concerts at Maple Leaf Gardens when I was, pass the joint, right? No thanks, buddy. Pass it to the next person. And I'm just reminded what my brother went through. So again, there's something to be learned about that.
Something to be learned.
The struggles they had, and you asked me earlier what keeps me going. I became a strong person just through life experience because I said to myself, if you're not going to do this, Jess, no one will. Now, there's helping hands out there, Joe. And what drives me to help people is I always use the analogy of if you see a person hanging just off a cliff on their fingertips, you walk by, what do? You don't step on that. Doesn't matter who they are or what they are in life, Joe. There's no labels here. You reach out and say, hey, friend, let me pull you from whatever's weighing you down.
Wow.
You pull them up, you put your arms there and around them, you give them a hug. It's going to be okay. Let's walk together side by side. How can I help you? And I've always lived with that principle in my life.
Yes, that's powerful. We are very, very fortunate to have you sharing these stories with us. I was going to ask you, when we do speak to young people, especially young people in some, the communities that here in Toronto, there is always a tendency to say, well, things were different for you. Things are not the same now. So maybe I can't do what Jess did. What would you say to somebody who had that kind of a mentality?
You know what? Situations are different, Joe. Times have changed, without a doubt. But there's one common element here. We all have our struggles. We all have our inner demons, okay? So whatever life throws at you, Joe, it's a choice, okay? You can take the easy way out. And it's like, again, I'm dating myself. There used to be a show called Let's Make a Deal with Monty Hall.
Yes.
The contestants were, there's a prize dangling in front of you. So the prize is, here's an easy life, going to life of crime, whatever, deceive people, just do wrong to people because it's the easy way out. It's for my own benefit. Or here's door number one. Door number one is hope, okay? What I would say to these young people is the one that say, situation's different. Joe, it's the same. Doesn't matter what it is. Circumstances may be the same, but we all have our struggles. What you need are two things, two words, care and hope. You need someone to care. The SDDP program. That's why I'm here today, because when I heard the stories your team shared with us a few weeks ago when we were here at the office about just your program, it just really resonates well with me because I experienced that through a different route, okay? I was poverty-stricken. There were handouts out there, outreach out there to help me, and that's what you're offering. So saying to these people, situations might be different, but there's resources out there. Getting back to Monty Hall, he's offering a door number one. Door number one, you open that up, there are programs out there. People are inviting you in. Take that leap of faith. Take that first step through that door and change your life, Joe. Okay? You it's within you. No one's going to do it for you. There's resources out there, but you got to have the desire to do it. And if you falter, it's okay. We're not looking for the home run swinger, okay? Ain't nothing wrong with a base hit, Joe. One base at a time.
Jess, that is amazing. It seems to me that whatever life has thrown at you, you're ability to just take the next step, you having faith in your ability to take the next step, has really worked for you.
And I hope that, whoever's listening to this podcast can really just relate to that, to the stories I've shared. And really, Joe, honestly, I think I'm a living testament that if you really want to do something for yourself, you can. I was like in despair, just I didn't know what was going to happen to my life. But, with the right people caring for me, helping me out, and having the desire to do it, I would have never imagined I'd become a vice president of finance. I was terrible in math. And here I am, helping shape one of the biggest property management companies in Canada.
Absolutely.
A very reputable company.
Yeah. Just your story is amazing. You hear it all the time, the difficulties of children that grow up in fatherless homes, the difficulty that, children that grow up in poverty, but you refuse to be a victim. No. You absolutely refuse to be a victim.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Don't be part of the statistic. Be part of the narrative to turn life around.
And it just so happens that you joined Greenwin Corp, and Greenwin just does a lot of philanthropy. That's like a match made in heaven.
Yes.
Could you share a little bit about your philanthropy personally and with Greenwin as well?
Sure. I said, again, like I said, earlier, that I'm a firm believer of paying it forward, giving it back to the community. I made it my lifelong mission to give back to the community. So I do a lot of volunteer work outside of Greenwin. They're charitable organizations, all pro bono. What I'm doing is I'm using my accounting skills to help some of these organizations, okay, with their accounting. Like, for instance, I was treasurer of my sons. Both of my sons played sports, minor sports.
Good.
I was treasurer. No one wants to count the money, right? So I help them with that. I do a lot of charity with the Knights of Columbus in my local community in Pickering. We do a lot of charities. We do an annual golf tournament. So coming to Greenwin, it's just a perfect fit for me because Greenwin Cares is an arm of Greenwin that does a lot of philanthropical work. And I really admire the Green family for their generosity. I'm telling you that they're philanthropists, but I think Greenwin takes it to the next level, but really being part of the process. Absolutely. It's not just writing a check, Joe.
No, it isn't.
They let, actions speak for themselves too. It's not just financial support. They're in the program, hand in hand with people running these outreach programs. So being at Greenwin, it's a delight for me whenever there's initiatives, there's any fundraising, or we have a toy drive right now for the Christmas, So I make it a point every year to put a couple of toys there, because there's an intrinsic value in giving. People just don't understand that. It's not about making yourself look good in front of everyone. You get this natural good feeling inside that you've made a difference, Joe. And with Greenwin's philanthropical work, it's just a natural tie-in with my desire to help people.
Absolutely.
It lends itself, and there's enough programs at Greenwin that we could volunteer, like the golf tournament. Sometimes they have something at the Oaks or the San Romano Way that we'll participate now and then. 1 year I went to the Taste of Jane and Finch. Like, it was really nice to be there, just to see the community, just to mingle with our residents there, the buildings that we manage, and just seeing people. And I think them seeing corporate people going to these events is enough for them to say, hey, someone out there cares. They're not up there in the ivory tower. They're not just writing checks and paying lip service. They're actually there with the community, Joe. So I think Greenwin is just really perfect for me in terms of providing me with a vehicle to continue my philanthropical and my idea of being a volunteer. Volunteerism is very important in my life.
I like that you say that, and so I was going to ask you, for those that might be curious, how do you give when you yourself have very little, when you are focused on surviving, when you have nothing? How do you give? Where do you find the energy or the strength or the motivation to give when you don't have much?
You know what? Giving is very subjective. Like, we can give in so many ways. This is one thing I learned with the Knights of Columbus, one of the charitable organizations I'm affiliated with. It's not just about financial support, right? Like, if you give your time, like, you may not have the financial means to give, Joe. If you give time, all these things I do, like I said, pro bono, helps an organization, okay? When I'm out there doing home visits, like outreach programs with someone that it's in need, I'm not necessarily writing a check. I'm just there talking to someone. It's like, what is it that you need? When I volunteer for the golf tournament, it's for charity.
It's for charity.
Okay, I'm not writing a check. I'm giving my time. So giving takes different forms, Joe.
True.
People just always associate giving, charity with dollars and cents. It's not all about that. It goes far beyond that. There's a lot of, I lend my skill set that I've learned being an accountant, whether it's, administrative work or accounting work behind the scenes. Because imagine if they have to pay someone to do that. And that's where I find the energy and the desire to help, because I know I have other skill sets. Financially is good if you can write the check, but there's other means to help out.
I'm going to ask you finally, Jess. There's someone out there listening to this, someone who's probably in a very bad space, financially, mentally, a young person in this city of ours that we love. If you could share some advice with them, what would you tell them?
What I would say is, first of all, take a deep breath, take a step back. Look at where your life is at right now, where you've been, where you are right now, where you want to be. You probably have so much turmoil going to mind, the world's going to end. You're still alive and breathing. Gratitude. I think we forget that very simple, notion of gratitude. If you're alive and breathing, that's something to be thankful for. And then you build on that. Okay, I don't have a lot of money to survive. I'm starving. I don't have a good education. There's enough outreach programs out there, Joe. Reach out and find someone. Talk to someone, right? And I think if people just really become resourceful, there's help out there. People care. You might think people are all about themselves these days. There's a lot of generosity there. And I'm not talking financially. People want to give their time to help you. So if you're struggling with your inner demons, whatever you've gone through, and you feel like there's no hope, know that someone out there cares. Just take a step back and look around, okay? Because I think if you speak out and say, I need help, someone will be out there say, I'll show you the way, Joe. Okay, there's so much love in the world. I still honestly believe that. Don't lose hope. And again, I'm a product of of that hardship that paid off, because I had it in my mind. Just reach deep into your mind. Like, just ask yourself this question, Joe. Do you want to continue on the path that you're on? Okay, or do you want to take a detour, take a different path rather, and find and search for your dreams?
Fantastic. Jess, your story is inspirational. Your energy is infectious, and we thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us. Jess Faigal, thank you so much. Much appreciated.
You're quite welcome, Joe, and thank you for letting me have an opportunity and a forum to share my story. And I hope I would have reached a lot of people out there and encourage them that there's hope in whatever situation you're in.